Welcome to Destination Business Freedom, hosted by Pat Mancuso. Join us as we explore success strategies and hacks from leading entrepreneurs, helping you bridge the gap between financial success and personal freedom. Your journey starts here.
Pat Mancuso here. Thank you so much for joining us on the Destination Business Freedom Podcast. We are very excited that you're here today and extremely excited about our guest today, which I'll get to in just a second. On the Destination Business Freedom Podcast, I interview business owners, entrepreneurs who have either exited their business or on that journey to exit. And the goal is to help business owners to get to that destination. In other words, many business owners exit the business because they're frustrated, they're maybe at an age of retiring, and yet many of them never exit the way that they want or the way they intended. My intention with interviewing the people that I interview on our show is to pull out the things that will help business owners to get to that destination address, to have and close that gap between their freedom and their finances, and ultimately achieve the reason they got into the business. So we're very excited that you're here with us, and please share our podcast with other business owners because the folks that we bring to the table are just amazing. Now, before I get into our session today, I do want to give a shout out to Ryan Tansom. Ryan actually did a podcast with the individual I'm going to introduce in just a second, and he also made the introduction, and full disclosure, transparency, I am a client of this company, and I just have to tell you what I've experienced in the journey with them as part of what they're doing for us in our business is just incredible. So I want to give Ryan a shout out as part of that, and we're just excited when we can bring this type of talent to our deal. Last thing I want to do is share with you that this session is brought to you by the Mancuso Consulting Group, which uses a proprietary method called the Mancuso method to help entrepreneurs and business owners dedicated to closing that gap between finances and freedom. The Mancuso method was created by Pat Mancuso. It encompasses his over 30 years of being a multiple business owner and exiting businesses, as well as helping thousands of entrepreneurs in their journey to that destination address. When you go to www.themancuso-method.com, you have the opportunity to take advantage of a no obligation. In fact, it actually is a call that could help you make money, where Pat's going to ask you some questions, and then you'll have the opportunity to spend a few minutes, 30 minutes to be exact or more, where if you don't achieve $10,000 of value or more from that call, he'll write you a check right on the spot for $500. That's how much he believes in the value he'll be able to deliver to you during that time. So go to www.themancuso-method.com. We're excited that you're here today. So without further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Jeremy Weisz. Welcome to our show today.
Pat, I'm excited, and I love Ryan too. He's amazing, so I can't wait to listen to that episode. And you do amazing things, so I'm excited to be here and to listen to more episodes of your show.
Well, and so I have to share with the folks why I'm really excited and about having you here today. So I want to do an intro and a proper intro, and usually and sometimes people are a little apprehensive about the intro, and yet yours is like it's amazing. So Dr. Jeremy Weisz and John Cochran are the co-founders of Rise25 LLC. I love that name of that company. A company's mission is to help your business connect to the ideal prospects, referral partners, and strategic partners using a done-for-you podcast. I like the done for you. I don't like to do it myself, and that's why I'm excited about our relationship. In addition to running Rise25, Dr. Jeremy Weisz has been featuring top 20 entrepreneurs with video interviews since 2010. How many is that, Dr. Jeremy?
Over 1,000.
1,000 time on task. That's why you're so good at what you do in coaching and consulting people to do what they want to do, and that's have impact. You've interviewed CEOs and founders of companies like TX90. The next one, listeners may not know, this is like Atari. Like it's one of the most classic companies. Some of the younger folks might not know, but we'll have some fun with that later. Einstein Bagels, Mattel, and the Orlando Magic, RX Bars, and many more, an inspired insider. He was a senior producer for 7 years at one of the early top business podcasts, helping to put out systems in place to help run the back-end operations. He was helping businesses launch and run podcasts before most people even knew what podcasts were. I think there's still some, Jeremy, that don't know what they are. A few of his favorite thoughts on podcasting that he's been sharing with over 15 years are podcasts will be similar to a website someday. Well, of course, they're actually better than a website, in my opinion. If you have a business to business, then you should have a podcast, period. Another thought he shares, which I absolutely love, he says, every business should have a podcast because hands down is the best thing I've ever done in my business in my life. I've made it best friends, met business partners, and had countless clients and referral partners come out of those relationships. I built my life and my business with podcasts. So, Dr. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I am excited too. So, what I'd like to do is I want to, the purpose of the Destination Business Freedom is it's a passion of mine. And that passion is, and you talk with a lot of business owners, and I do as well. There are so many business owners that start a business. Let's say, for example, it's the individual who buys a lawnmower and starts cutting lawn. And then before you know it, that individual's got 100 employees and they're like, what the heck happened? And yet many times those businesses, either the business owner doesn't have freedom, doesn't have a life, doesn't have money. My goal, my commitment with this, and the reason that I'm excited to have you on the show today is I want to help business owners get to that address. I want them to exit the business however they choose to exit, but exit it and at least have that destination. And so my goal with you today is twofold. First, I want to drill into your business journey. And second, I want to talk about how you are helping business owners like myself in building their businesses so they actually can connect to that destination address. So, Dr. Jeremy, let's jump in and talk about your business journey. First, how did you get involved in being an entrepreneur? I mean, I read your bio, but when did you decide I'm going to be a business owner?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think I never really set out to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what the term was, really, to be honest with you, when I went into business. So my dad suffered with really bad neck pain and pain in his arm, and I saw he went to medical professionals, and after for years nothing helped him, and after a few months he went to the chiropractor and he was almost 100% better. And so I saw him go through that, and I said, you know what, I really am interested in health. I could really see myself doing that. And so I set on a journey to become a chiropractor, actually. And you know, maybe I should have some more forethought on it. But looking at it, when you look at it, most chiropractors start their own practice, right?
Yeah.
They maybe work for someone for a little bit. So I went in to chiropractic school, and I was like, okay, cool. They're going to teach me to be a chiropractor. And there's like one class on business in the entire 4 years.
Sure.
Okay. And so I'm like, so I was in the library getting books on tape. If people don't know what a tape is, it's this little thing that you used to stick in a cassette player. And I would get like Tony Robbins and all these other, business related stuff to learn business. And I was always entrepreneurial, but when I came out of school, I decided to go with a training of an office that opened, I think at the time, over 30 offices, and to learn the business side of things. Okay. And so that's what I did. And so and that's how I got into podcasting, because I was going to all of these marketing and business conferences to learn the business side. And I discovered this medium. This is back, I think, in around 2006 or 7, about podcasting. And I loved it. And I loved the learning part of it because, as you know, you can have the top experts in the world on your show and ask them whatever you want to ask them from a learning professional development standpoint, the relationship standpoint, as you mentioned. And so that's what I started doing, and just for my own personal professional development. And then it turned into a separate business because people were asking me, how do you do this? Can you help me? I never set out to start that business. I was a chiropractor, but it was ultimately figuring out how to run efficiently a business in general, because a chiropractic business, lawnmower business, a dental practice, whatever it is. And you mentioned this part about freedom. I meant, when I was early on, I was practicing, I basically had my own business, but I really just had a job, right? It
Right.
wasn't, I wasn't like the CEO of the business. I was the janitor. I was the practitioner. I was the marketing wing. I was everything. So,
Yep.
it was just an interesting journey, but that's kind of took me into podcasting. And you mentioned this freedom part. There's one thing that has helped me over the years, and I'm always working on this, but John and I, we do an intervention, what we call our intervention meeting every week. And our intervention meeting is, I don't know why it's on me and not him, but the intervention is me. And to list the things that I should not be doing. Okay. It could be stuff I like doing. It could be stuff
Yeah.
I don't like doing. It could be stuff, and we've definitely fought a bit on, well, I'm good at that. I like that. And he's like, you shouldn't be doing it. So we have this list, and we've whittled it down over the years of stuff that I should not be doing, and then handing it to other people.
Yes.
Even if it's like a part-time person could take this one, even if it's another company, even if it's an internal staff. So you mentioned the freedom part. That's just, I'm always working on that, and that's something we do on an ongoing basis.
Well, we'll have to have a talk later on, Jeremy, about that. This intervention thing has to happen every week. It sounds like there's some pretty deep issues there.
Exactly.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because many times when I'll ask an entrepreneur, and I'm going to ask you this question, is that, what's one of their biggest challenges in their journey that they've experienced, and letting go is one of those, is, because they started with, it was their deal, and you were talking about, you were doing everything. And so that's absolutely a challenge. And we find that a lot in our consulting business and working with business owners. And we actually have a process that we take them through, and somewhat, there's some similarities to, you identify what you really love doing, you identify what you're doing, and then you take those two and you compare that to what you should be doing. And all of a sudden you have a really clear picture that there might be some things that you shouldn't be doing. And so let's move those off your plate. Um, so let me ask you this. You started this journey of being an entrepreneur like many do. It wasn't by design, right? It was by a circumstance, and now that circumstance leads you to, being a chiropractor. Now that leads you to running a business and growing a business. And so I'm curious in that, why didn't you just go work for somebody else? Like, what caused you to go, okay, I'm going to do this, versus you could stay over here, work a set schedule, not have to worry about payroll, have none of the risk, none of the liability. Like, what kind of drove you over to that other side?
Yeah, I mean, initially, I did my first year out of school to learn from that business that opened up 30 office. I think that was like a really big um, time in my career that I was just learning, and I think there's a big advantage to learning on someone else's dime.
Right.
And so I did do that, and actually, my goal was to go back and then open my own office, but I didn't have the funds or the money to actually do that. So what I actually did when I moved back to Chicago, which I'm from, I started interviewing for jobs.
Mm,
And what happened was, um, they weren't, they weren't paying that much.
right.
And it was it was a lot of responsibility as far as the hours. So the first job interview I went to, I go, listen, this seems great, but like, it's not that much. And it seemed like they needed maybe 2 or 3 days of someone there. I go, why don't I just cover your office for those 2 or 3 days? I could charge you per day,
Right.
and we could do that until you find someone, right? Because you obviously need someone. And the person's like, yeah, let's do it. And then I went to the next interview and I was like, I kind of proposed the same thing. And I went to the next interview and I proposed the same thing.
Love it.
And it just like hit me because
Right.
there was a short-term solution. Now, some of these offices kept me on for 2 years. So I had booked myself again. I didn't go in thinking I was going to do that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
after I booked myself out for a couple years of covering these offices, and they're like, I don't have a need to hire someone because you can see the patient load in like 2 days instead of the 4 days. And
Yep.
so I just created my own, it was kind of entrepreneurial
Yeah.
company doing office coverage. And then eventually one of the companies I did office coverage for had 3 offices, and they're like, we just want to hire you to be our consultant and to work. And one of them actually gave me space. So I had kind of the best of all worlds.
Yeah.
I was their
Yeah.
consultant. I was helping them. I was being paid, and they said I can use their space free of charge on certain hours to build my own practice. So I just bootstrapped it until I then could get my own space 3 days a week, and then until I can get and buy my own space after my commercial space after that. So
Love it.
it was just this progression of bootstrapping and kind of doing one thing to the next.
So what led you into podcasting? So you and John have created this amazing company and process with Rise25. What kind of was the impetus for this? Like, how did you guys come together? Where did that all
Yeah.
start?
Yeah, originally, and you said it before, it's like I kind of joke around, but I'm not really joking. Almost everything in my life that's good outside, I didn't meet my wife on a podcast, but my best friends, I've gone on family vacations, I've gone to people's weddings, all these things, almost all of them track back to a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And it just started with my chiropractic journey, just trying to learn marketing, like I said. And then I just realized there's so much more power in this from a relationship standpoint. Like the way I view things, Pat, and we know each other a bit, is I like to think of things and how do I give to someone else?
Right.
That's it. Like, what are the ways I can give to them? I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting anything. And I have found no better way than to profile someone and share what they're doing on my podcast, because that goes on 15 different channels. We'll create another snippet of it and post it on social so that they can share their journey.
Right.
And I can make I make 5 to 30 introductions a day to different people, and I can use that episode to share what they're working on. So it makes it very easy for me to introduce to people. So John and I met through podcasting. We were both podcasting very early on, and I was going to San Francisco to a conference, and I knew him, and I said, hey, I want to get a group of like 10, 15 people together to mastermind in a room. I know you're a part of several groups. And do you want to do this with me? Because I'm not in San Francisco. And he didn't really know me that well. I don't know why he said yes, but he's like, sure. And so we got a group together for a day
Yeah.
and mastermind. A lot of them were podcasters. We had Steve Chu, who runs My Wife Quit Her Job. We had Jordan Harbinger in the room, who has the Jordan Harbinger Show, which is an amazing show. And there were an Andrew Warner of Mixergy we had in there. And they're all, when I look back at them, like I didn't realize they were a lot of early podcaster.
Yeah.
Zen Home was there. And so that's where it started. And then people love that event that we did. And they're like, when's your next event? And I'm like, this wasn't like, we don't have a next event. It was just
There
like,
was
I
no
was in
business plan
town.
for this. We're just getting people together.
And you notice this theme, like maybe
Yeah.
I don't plan that much, but like, hey, when's the next one? We don't have an event. This is just thrown together. And so we're like, okay, we listen to the customers a little bit. They're like, well, if you did another one and maybe it was a little longer, we'd come to it. And so we're like, okay. So we did another one a couple months later. This one was like 2.5 days in Austin at a nicer resort instead of like an office space. So that's how our business partnership started, almost like dating, but we met through podcasting, and then we just started doing some things together. And we both think very similarly about relationships are the most important and just giving to our relationships mentality.
Yep.
And then we both were podcasting and people were coming to us with questions, and it just made sense for us to, not just do the strategy and the accountability, but we found the full execution. People didn't want to do anything. They just want to show up, have the conversation. And so we, over years, built out a team so that we are that easy button. So, but it's went back to us meeting through podcasting and then just doing stuff together.
Wow. I love that. And I can relate to it because, you obviously know that we had a podcast pre-COVID that we had a number of, I think we had 85 or 90 episodes. And my director of operations, who's also my daughter, did that. And when I told her that I was thinking about relaunching our podcast, she goes, "I'm not doing it." And I'm like, okay, so I do need to find somebody who I can appreciate that. So, so let me shift gears a little bit on you. And as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as somebody who's responsible for payroll and bills and lead generation, all those type of things, I want to ask you from your perspective, what's been the biggest challenge or challenges that you've had to meet, adjust, and grow through?
I think, for me, it's just balancing operations and sales because, as sales increase, operations change. They have to grow as well. And so especially in our world in the agency, even in the chiropractic world, managing new business and operations, it kind of has to grow together. And so it's just that constant, at least from a Rise25 perspective, it's as we bring on more clients, the nature of, I don't know, hashtag agency, but like we bring on more staff to support those clients. And so it's striking that balance. And I'm very operationally focused to make sure things are, running like a well-oiled machine. And so sometimes we've had to just slow the sales part down to make sure we had the people and operations in place before we can kind of go to the next level, right? And so, and it's comes down to people, just making sure that we're training, onboarding, and doing all the things with people that is important. And I know you have like a whole acronym on this that you teach people actually. So I wish I would have known that before. But now I know it now. So, but that balance is challenging.
Yeah. It's interesting, Dr. Jeremy, that today I had a call with one of our consulting clients who we've been with now for about 3 months, and we're bringing our organizational development system and our hiring, recruit, select, train, manage, motivate into his organization. And we have our call today. And, of course, we started off with the biggest priorities, most important things. And of course, there were people issues. And, almost 100% of entrepreneurs and business owners struggle in that because, frankly, there's no place where you can go and get taught people issues, right? I mean, yeah, there's some classes at college, and yeah, there's this, but it's a struggle that many entrepreneurs experience. So I wanna stay on this topic, but it's going to be an interesting one. So we'll see if I make some enemies with John. But what I see a lot of times where there's great things that happen with partners and businesses, and then there's challenges. And there's nothing wrong with a challenge, right? Or a struggle, because we grow through that. What is something you look back on and you look at in your growth with John and go, I wish I would have learned something earlier on because maybe we could have avoided that struggle or that challenge or that ceiling and moved through it sooner? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, people who are around us say we fight like an old married couple. So
Love
there's no, hiding the fact ever, and we don't try to, that there aren't challenges or we fight like brothers. And sometimes this happened a couple months ago. We had a new staff member on a call with us and we were just like at each other. But then after we're just like, that was just how we hash it out. And one person, okay, wins the argument or whatever it is, and then we just go back to our business. And we saw like this person was like a deer in headlights on the Zoom call. And so afterwards I called them and I was like, don't worry, we're fine. Like we just fight like brothers
Yeah.
and we hash it out and then we move forward.
Right.
So I think it's very, I mean, it is like a marriage, it's a business marriage. And I think fighting fairly, and I think both of us are very respectful of each other.
Sure.
Just fighting fairly is something I've learned. Just to, if we are hashing it out, you know, one thing I've learned personally is I shouldn't just jump to a no or conclusion.
Yeah.
And this happens a lot with him or me, and he'll preface it, and he'll be the first one to be like, he'll preface it with me now, and it's like, Jeremy, you're gonna hate this. And I go,
So you already know what's coming. You already know what's coming.
Because before I'm like, that's a terrible idea. But like, there's like nuggets of what he may have suggested that I just need to be more open-minded.
Sure.
And so I, for myself, have learned I just need to just listen and not jump to, because he's more kind of visionary. And if anyone's read Rocket Fuel by Mark Winters and Gino Wickman, the visionary and the integrator, I am more of an integrator. And so he is more of a visionary. So he's like throwing out these ideas. I'm like, do you know how much operational stuff we're going to have to put in place? Yeah. So there is a definite, so knowing there's that dynamic is helpful. But I immediately jump to like, come on, like another one of these ideas type of thing. But there's a nugget of that we can actually use. So I have learned just to just shut up, listen, and then process before just be like, no, terrible. We're not doing that.
So what I need to do is I'm gonna send you guys a link to our behavioral assessment and have you both do it, and then I'll validate it with both of you, and then I'll come together and I'll be able to like open your eyes to so many things, because I laugh about it, like, but it's real. What you're talking about is very real. And again, referencing the call I had with one of our clients this morning, there were issues with two people. And we're going through this process right now where we behavioral assess the team, and we still have to validate their behaviors with the individuals. But the point is when I showed him the two behavioral graphs, and he has enough understanding right now in our journey to see why they were doing this and how wrong it was to have this one individual reporting to the other individual. It doesn't make them bad people. You guys are amazing people. It doesn't make the conversations not valid. It's just, it's a blind spot for many entrepreneurs in that whole behavioral piece. So let me.
And that's the other thing you mentioned. I wish sometimes we overlap in some of our skills and things like that. And so you mentioned that division thing, and sometimes we've just learned, and sometimes it's tough, but just to divide it so we're not, okay, this is your realm, you make the decision, you don't have to come to me on it, and this, I can make the decision, I don't have to come to you, especially with like, equal partners,
right?
You want to get the input of the other person, at least we did. So that also I've learned, just trying to separate out stuff like, this is your domain, you handle this is my domain, I handle this.
Well, and it's so important that because those things can escalate and they can build, and then they build to the point where there's not an opportunity to reconcile, and all of a sudden you have either a partner leaving, a partner wanting to be bought out, and that's never the timing. Just that whole structure is never good. At least in my experience, it's never been that way. So let me shift gears. I've got a couple more questions, and then we're going to shift over to the great stuff you guys are doing and the impact you're having on business owners. So the journey that you've had, what is the biggest mistake that you made? And mistakes are always opportunities to learn. So I just want to preface that when I ask it. What's the biggest mistake that you've made that if you would have had advice or counseling, you likely wouldn't have made that mistake?
I'm trying to think. from a mistake. I mean, there's so many mistakes.
I know.
I mean,
I know.
I'm trying
The
to
biggest one.
pick one.
Pick one.
There's mistakes every day.
It's true.
A lot of it revolves around communication.
Yeah.
And one that sticks out is we are dealing with a client and it just wasn't a fit on both sides. And we made the mistake. It usually, the theme I would say overall is communication, but this one we were communicating via email, and we communicated that via email. I mean, over several emails or whatever. And it just, I think when people are rejected, they don't respond well. And there's a different tone that we can use over the phone as opposed
Right.
to email. And so we made a big mistake. And I always think about this, that almost kind of firing the client over email.
Yeah.
And we still did it in like a nice way. It like, you'll be better off, we'll be better off, blah, blah, blah. They did not take it that way. And it was just not good from the relationship standpoint. That was the opposite of our intention.
Right.
And so now it's just like, when we're talking, we see a couple emails like that, John and I are both like, let's get on the phone.
Yeah.
Let's get on the phone with this person and or company. And so that was, we really pride ourselves on making sure the relationship's intact and solid, and that resulted in the opposite.
Yeah. There was a training program that we did inside of Keller Williams for from 2009. I was involved in the 2009 to basically COVID, and there was a part of it where we would take a sentence. I didn't say Bob did that, and you take that same sentence and you emphasize a different word. I didn't say Bob did that, or I didn't say. And the point that I'm trying to make is you go through that sentence 6 times and you emphasize a different word each time.
It can be
And
interpreted 10 different ways.
exactly. And then
yeah.
you add text message or email to it. And that's why we have communication challenges, Jeremy, in our world, is because we all rely on that phone, right? And a lot of things. So that makes a lot of sense. Share with me one or two of your in your journey as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as an incredibly talented individual. Share a couple of mentors of yours.
Yeah. So I have distant mentors and I have actual mentors. When I think of books as far as distant mentors like Dale Carnegie and How to Win Friends and Influence People, John Ruhlin's book, Giftology. I know John personally too. So I have distant mentors and then personal mentors. And that sticks out in my journey as one of the most impactful, best things I've ever done, which is mentors. I've had my mentors on my podcast because I want to learn even more from them. Some of the mentorship started because I had them on. And so Brian Kurtz is one. I don't know if you know Brian, but Brian runs the Titans group. And early on, I had him on my podcast. And immediately I was like, this person was just a giving person in nature. He really valued family and relationships. He was really smart and successful and savvy in business, checking all the boxes. So I think of my mentors as like that kind of whole package, because family and relationships are important. So if someone's ultra successful, but they don't treat people well, it's really not, a mentor for me.
Yeah.
Not saying I can't learn something from them. So Brian Kurtz is one that has really influenced me, helped me. John Corker, my business partner, is a colleague and a mentor. I learn a lot from him. Like, he's got some interesting experience. He worked at the White House under Bill Clinton, had his own law firm, and worked at DreamWorks. And so, I consider him a colleague and a mentor as well. I am mentorship from a book's perspective. Chris Voss wrote Never Split the Difference. And I loved his book from more of not even a business perspective. He was a ex-FBI hostage negotiator. So, specialized in negotiation.
Right.
But I really was listening to that book for parenting perspective, actually. Like there's always a negotiation with kids. And then Chris, I had on the podcast, was able to ask him my personal questions I had. So those are a few of my, distant mentors who have turned into, people that I have an ongoing conversation relationship with.
I love that. And I love the way you put that, distant mentor, because I think people forget the fact is those people impact us, whether we buy their books and I was reading Ryan Deiss's book Scalable, and he's going to be on one of our future sessions. And whether I ever knew Ryan or not, or had the opportunity to interview him on our show, like that book is a book that we're implementing in our business now. And so I love that distant mentor term. I love that. That's my takeaway. One of my takeaways.
I kind of categorize it. There's like health mentors, there's business mentors, there's specific agency mentors. So like Jason Swank is, built a agency to over 8 figures and sold it. He's been there, done that in the agency world. So I consider him on the agency front a mentor. So
Right.
I just try to mentors in these different segments of my life.
I love it. I love it. Okay, we're going to shift gears because I absolutely, full disclosure, Dr. Jeremy, I am absolutely excited and grateful to have the opportunity with Rise25, and that, having you on the show today has nothing to do with that. What the reason I wanted to have you on is you guys have really built out a system, and I'm a systems person. There's 3 types of leverages: the system, people, and tools, according to Gary Keller, the founder and creator of Keller Williams. And I believe in those leverage points. And you guys have put together a system for podcasting, and it truly is a system. And so talk to me a little bit about first and I know this, but I want to hear it from you. I'm a business owner. I'm sitting out there and I'm hearing this podcast and I'm going, I really want a podcast. And I don't know anything about podcasts. Don't even know where to start. Don't even know what to name it. Like, what advice would you give to that individual who's in that position, knowing that this is a way to give back, but it's also a lead generation source for a business?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is there's really 5 steps to profit with a podcast, right? Because ultimately people will come to me and be like, this is just a passion project or something. I'm like, listen, that's cool.
Yeah.
But if you don't generate, and we're talking B2B podcasts here, because there's true crime podcasts, there's comedy podcasts, that's different. So what I more specialize in is B2B podcasts. Someone who's in actual business. There's a B2B component to it. Even if they sell B2C, there's a B2B component to it. And so there's 5 steps that we talk about when it comes to profiting with a podcast. And I sometimes have to talk people into making money with it seems weird, but like I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago. They're a PR company and very successful. And they're like, I have this concept for a podcast they're talking about. I'm like, this has nothing to do with your business. They're like, no, it's just a passion project. I'm like, that's cool. It's time and energy. The reality is, and I've seen people quit because they look back, even how excited they are in the beginning. And then in a month, in 2 months, in 4 months, in 6 months, whatever, it's a matter of time. You're like, why am I doing this?
Right.
Like, so I really stress on making sure it does deliver ROI for a company. And because they could justify the time, energy, and money it's going to take them. So the 5 steps I talk about, one is create your dream 200, 300, 400, 500. So, and that people think of a dream 200, 300, whatever it is, as a client list, but it's not. To me, it's not a client list. It's a partner list, a referral strategic partner list. It could be clients. It could be potential clients, past clients. It could be big authorities in the space. So there's a lot of, when we brainstorm in like 17 categories of this. But the point is to think about who are your best relationships that you want to give to, right? And the next is reaching out to those people, right? And we talk about getting ROI with outreach, and these are people that you off in the beginning know, and they know you, trust you, like you. So involving them, and for me, it's a podcast. For someone else, they may just want to do a blog post or something like that, right? That's the medium I just find the most connection with people, et cetera. And so the next is to reach out. And then there's certain methods of reaching out that we recommend. Obviously, when you're doing it in that nature, it's a give. You're not asking someone, you're not pitching someone. You're just wanting to share their story. And then the third part is really thinking of the art and science of producing the content, right? And that goes into technology, like you mentioned. There's all these pieces, like the technology setup, and then there's the content part. And so, the common questions we get are like, well, what technology do I use? I'm like, you just get a USB mic. I mean, you're using a Yeti, I have a Yeti, there's an ATR 2100. You look on Amazon, best USB mic for podcasting. I'm sure there's like a number that come up. We're using Zoom right now. You can use anything that you use. Some people use, if they're used to using Google Chats or Microsoft Teams or whatever they normally use, I say just use it. Don't overcomplicate it. I laugh. I'll see someone with his like huge like soundboard, like you're a podcasting expert. How do I use this? I'm like, I have no idea. I just keep it as simple as possible because it's about the relationship and creating great content. And then from the content perspective, in that third, so creating that dream list, getting ROI with the outreach, and then creating the content with the technology setup. Creating the content is like the simple advice I have on that after doing thousands of interviews myself. I just tell people to be selfish, meaning just ask the questions that you're most curious about.
Right.
Because we can overcomplicate it.
Sure.
Like, I wonder what my audience is thinking. I wonder what this person's thinking. I wonder what that person's thinking. But in the end, I'm thinking, what is most interesting and what do I want to learn from this person? And I'm just going to ask it. And that nature of just genuine curiosity comes out to the guests. So I ask what I'm curious about. And so from that, and asking, do a little bit of research goes a long way with the content piece. So like when I had Nolan Bushnell on, who started Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, I basically found out that he was Steve Jobs' mentor.
Right.
And so he turned down, Steve Jobs offered him 33% of Apple for $50,000. Okay. And so I found out just the fact that I was like, okay, I have to ask about this.
Right.
Why did you turn this down? I don't know if he'd be the wealthiest person of all time if he owned 33%, but
wealthier than he is now.
Right. And same thing when I had the co-founder of Pixar on, and he had to have meetings with Steve Jobs. And so I was just asking things I was really genuinely curious about, but I had to do a little bit of research to find some of these things. The next thing, the fourth thing is growing the reach through the give loop. So again, the give loop to me is like, how do I give this person more? Well, I'll take it, I'll put the link on LinkedIn or social media. I may do a snippet of it, and that allows that person to share it with their network. And for me, it's not about quantity, it's about quality, right? And so when I share this with people, when this goes live, I'm going to share it. I'm going to tag some like key people that I know in my entrepreneurial circle that are really interesting, successful people. And so that helps me, because it profiles my authority, but it also helps you because I'm sharing your website and I'm sharing your stuff. So it grows your reach. So it's sharing it through social. And that's what an interview style podcast does.
Right.
And the last is turning the podcast into profits, turning guests into partners. So like guests could be a referral strategic partners, right? Like I have a lot of people on my podcast. I'm, in a lot of different CEO entrepreneur circles. And when I think of what you're doing, of course, I'm gonna be like, talk to Pat. So I am definitely a referral partner.
Right.
And so I could be, there could be someone coming on, it could be inbound. So like someone's like, Pat, I want to use your methods. You could have that person on and be like, listen, that's cool. Let me just learn more about your business. I'm going to do it anyways. So why don't you come on and I'll have you on?
Yep.
Or it could be a potential client outbound. Like this person looks really interesting to you. Maybe they're a potential client, maybe not. When I think of having someone on, Pat, so those are kind of the 5 things.
Yep.
Create the dream list, get ROI with outreach, look at the art and science of producing amazing content, building the give loop through growing your reach, and then turning your guests into partners. Now, when I have someone on my podcast, I'm not thinking, my mindset is not, I want this person as a partner or a client. My mindset is actually, because from a give perspective, who could I introduce this person to that will help them? How can I get them a client? How can I
Right.
get them a referral partner? And that's how I think about it. And, if they're in need of what I do, we'll talk, but I'm more focused on how I can help them than, now, listen, we know who's a good partner, who's not a good partner. So you want to actually, Adam Grant's book is one of my favorites, Give and Take. And he found that the most successful people were givers and the least successful people were givers because they didn't give with the right strategy,
Right.
mindset, or whatever. So those are the 5 things I think about when it comes to profiting with a podcast.
I love
You
it.
know?
Well, and the thing that you just to validate a couple of those pieces. So I have another interview here coming up shortly, and when I did the research, and this is somebody I've known, Jeremy, for 30 years. Like, this is my personal banker. I have followed him. He was one of my first real estate transactions, and I was doing some research on him. Now, of course, you'd think, well, why would I do research on him? I found out that he drives a Harley, and I've known this guy for 30 years. And I'm like, drives a Harley? Are you kidding me? Like, it just is so outside of what I would perceive him. So one of the things I'm going to ask him about today is his Harley. And so you validated the system in my mind. You validated the system, why that's important. The other thing that you validated that you guys have created is, if it's a model, follow the model. And I go back to my early days in Keller Williams, and why I think we were successful in what we did in building our franchises. And Gary would always talk about, follow the model. Just follow the model. You're not always going to have the success that you desire or the intention of the success, but if you follow the model more times than not, you will. So I just love that. Um, so as we're kind of tying a ribbon on this, I want to ask you a couple of final questions. Um, what haven't you shared that you think it would be really important in your whole journey, whether it's your journey in your business, journey as a business owner, in what you're doing and impacting the podcast world? What haven't you shared that you think would be really important for somebody to hear?
Yeah. That's a good question. One of the things that I learned over time, it's taken a while, of how important process is
Yeah.
and documenting process. It's like literally probably I spend a lot of time thinking and doing this stuff, but it's the non-sexy stuff that makes things work for us. So, you know, I think about process and documenting process. And even when it comes to the intervention meeting, it makes me feel more comfortable to hand it off when I can see, okay, if it's in my head or if it's in a
Yeah.
team member's head, it's scary. So it's helped me sleep at night. We use Sweet Process as a software to manage the SOPs, which it's all discoverable. And so when
Sure.
we started implementing Sweet Process, because we used to use like Google Docs and we weren't able to find things everywhere, it wasn't a centralized location. So using Sweet Process, documenting those processes. There's a lady I had on, Adi Clevitt, who specializes in that. We had her help us do some of those things. And it's interesting. She's a done for you for SOPs for companies.
Okay.
And so that's something that we just keep refining, getting better at, is creating processes, improving the process so we can create a consistent product and
Yeah.
better service.
I love it. I love it. So I'm just curious. We're really going out on a limb. Is John a process guy or not?
I'm more the process person.
I know.
Yeah.
I already knew that answer, Doug.
I wouldn't say he's not,
No,
but,
I know.
but
that's why you guys do some
not
of
as
those
much as me.
do those
No.
intervention deals, is because that's your core. I can already tell that's your core strength. And when that's not your core strength, which of course it's not mine, I just want to run. So it's funny. I just want to have a little fun there.
Exactly.
So what I'd like to do is, how does somebody reach out, get in touch? I mean, you guys have, a number of free resources. You also have a process which people go through, in my opinion, which is worth every cent that you charge for it, or that people invest for it. But how would somebody reach out to you to start that process?
Yeah, I mean, if you have questions, you could email us support@rise25.com. If you want to email me personally, Jeremy@rise25.com. You can check out some of the podcast episodes at inspiredinsider.com. But yeah, we have a lot of free resources on rise25.com where we talk about this stuff, some of the stuff we're talking about here with relationships, podcasting, and all of those things. So you can check it out on rise25.com.
I love it. I love it. And of course, full endorsement. We're, what are we, 4 months into the journey, and we're absolutely loving it. And you guys, I mean, I can't even begin to the thing that I really enjoyed, and I'll give Noah credit for this, Noah Tetzer, is I was struggling we had a podcast obviously before, and we could have just used that podcast name. And I was struggling with it. And in about a 10-minute conversation, we had a direction, and about 10 minutes later, we had the name. And I'm super excited about what it ended up being, and because it truly describes what we are and who we are and where we're going. So thanks, Noah and Jeremy and John, and thanks to the whole Rise25 team, because you guys are just amazing. So Dr. Jeremy, any final thoughts you want to take us out with?
No, I encourage people to check out your website and the podcast episodes and the methodology. It's so hard for me not to ask you questions, because you have just a huge breadth of knowledge and experience. So I just encourage people to check out what you're doing and what you've done too.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. And I'm grateful. And I just committed to, I don't want to have one more business owner that I know of or come in contact with that doesn't get out of what they intended to get out of their business. And it doesn't matter where they're at. There's still time to do that, because otherwise it'd be just easier to go take a job and not have to worry about payroll, yet that's not why they started that business. So we're excited. So I appreciate that. Dr. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time today. We're very, very excited that we had you, and I know that you've had a huge impact on our listeners. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you for joining Destination Business Freedom with Pat Mancuso. May the insights and strategies shared guide you towards financial prosperity and personal freedom. Continue to navigate boldly. Until next time, keep transforming challenges into achievements. Farewell, and stay the course.